And you guys get to be a part of that. How many of you are leading trips in May? How many in June? June, lots of June. July? Okay. So you have a little bit of time, right? So our goal for this week is to get you pumped up and ready to talk to the group leader even before you meet him in your location. Has anybody ever done that before? If you've trip led before? You have? Good, good, that's good. So that's what I want to happen by the end of the week, to know that you are confident enough and ready to meet that group leader on the phone or in a video before you even meet them in your location. And you guys are going to be coming into the consulting process, and that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. I don't want that word to be foreign, so consulting just means the person who is preparing, who's encouraging them, who is their accountability partner as they prepare. So, got it? We're going to talk about what that looks like and what that means to you and why in the world that's important tomorrow. As we close up tonight, does anyone have any questions, like initially, about trip leading? You guys will have opportunity to go into your location groups tomorrow, which is where you get into the nitty gritty of like, what trip am I on and what am I doing and how do I get there?
Makes me less stressed. Okay.
You will find that out.
No, I know, but hearing you say that makes me feel more empowered, so good job.
Okay,
Just
good.
let me know.
You will have time with your location groups, and that is important as trip leaders. You need to know who your location leader is. Does everybody know who that is?
Yes.
Okay, that's the first step. So we will get into our location leaders and our location groups and dig into like where you're going and when you're going and who you're going with and what you're doing. But does anyone have like basic questions about just trip leading or any stories you want to share about trip leading?
I have a question. What's the hardest part about that?
Hardest part about trip leading?
People. Just people.
Be fluid.
I think it's the balancing act. I think it's trying to keep all the pieces together and not forgetting what you're doing. And keeping the main thing while you're balancing all of this. What's the main thing? It's Jesus. The goal is to see people reach for Christ. The itinerary is important, yes. The ministries are important, yes. Making sure everyone is comfortable and questions are answered is important. But the main thing is Jesus. So it's like balancing all these plates, but also like making sure it's still Jesus.
Also communicating. It's so important to just be always communicating. Like even if changes happen during the trip, because it will happen. In Facebook, in the class, being able to communicate effectively to your group leaders and let them know what's happening from there. It's two things that have been communicating at times.
Taking back off that, I was just talking to Jessica. We had this team, my first team ever, from Sioux Falls, and we had like to really be fluid with them because things change. But having that time with just your staff and the group's leader and to really discuss, it just kept it going, and we still talk to them now. Like that will be an unbreakable bond, and I think taking the time to make sure Ryan, who was their leader, was our age, was on the same page. I mean, they already planned, they're going to Belize this year. So it's like, just keeping them in the loop and communicating. I mean, that was the best trip, but it was a hot mess. But it was fun.
I got to lead a trip. Actually, both of our Costa Rican staff were on that trip, and we showed up, and I had an itinerary all planned. I already met with the pastor. I thought everything was good to go. Got there, and pastor was like, no. Actually, no, we're not doing this. And the team had planned for all of this VBS stuff and all of this other ministry, and pastor completely changed it. And I was like, okay. So one day I would tell them, okay, we're doing this and this and this. And then pastor would be like, actually, we changed this. And so I'd be like, well, that plan from 15 minutes ago is now changed. And oh my gosh, I was so stressed because pastor was like changing everything, and the group leader, like, what are they going to think? But because we were able to see that pastor was so in tune with the Holy Spirit, in and also communicate with the group and keep all of our staff involved and make sure everybody was continually on the same page. It worked out great. And if you keep the group leader in check with what's going on, it's all good. It's all good. They might get a little frustrated or like, what's going on? But communication is key.
So is there a way to combat, like, if you have a pastor coming in and saying, like, no, we're not gonna do this, and it's not working out, how do you go about, like?
You looked at me. So I wasn't gonna say this, but because they gave me first impressions, I acted like that was the most important thing. The most important thing is really your relationship with the group leader, which usually happens pre-trip, and really with the pastor. Now, the pastor can be a little bit tricky, but when things don't go good on a trip, and the group leader loves you before the trip, you've prayed with them, you're excited, they know about my family, I know about them, these changes roll off their back. When you haven't talked to them and they come in and you're the one changing things on a trip they planned, again, think of the 9-month process, and you haven't invested in their lives before they come, that gets a little bit rocky. To go to your question, one of the things I do is if I know my group's planning VBS, I'll actually ask the pastor to print out little flyers to announce it. I put their church to work. So if he changes it, it's a little bit on him and his community too. It's got to be so much from the Holy Spirit because now he's aware that not only has the group been planning on it, but his whole church has. So if there are some standard ministries, I typically will say, hey, can you get a little flyer out? Can you pass it out a Sunday or two before we come in? And that kind of puts the pastor on the hook for changing it really quickly because he's already announced to his whole congregation how that week is running and how ministry looks. So yeah, with your location groups, you'll want to kind of figure out that balance. I know locations run a little bit different. Working in a primarily English-speaking country of Belize, I could call the pastor and kind of get in touch with them whenever I want, and that really worked out well for me.
It's also a really, like, just from, I've been, like, doing trip leading for a couple of seasons now, and it's always a good idea to leave your drama llama at home, okay?
Your drama llama.
And I just let my groups know ahead of time, there's no room for the drama llamas. We don't have enough food that we brought, we don't want to feed those. But also just making sure that you are, like, staying humble. Like, there's no room for your pride in these situations. My last name is Wright, so I was born right. And I'll be the first to tell you that you are not always right, even when you were born into it. And being able to just be humble and be transparent with people, and just, again, going back to those relationships, people are willing to just accept so much more as far as, like, changes and stuff. If you are willing to, like, put yourself out there and just, like, lay yourself down and just be like, hey, this is the truth, this is real, and this is what's going on.
Yeah. What's your name?
Sarah Wright.
Sarah Wright. Yeah. Let's give Sarah Wright a round of applause. So humility. If you ever get tested on it, whew. We did have one group where it was an adult group. We as staff couldn't do anything right. I'm 39 now. I was probably more like 25. And I think my assistant leader and I were kind of in tears. Like, they were just outwardly not loving things. And it wasn't different than any of our other trips. So we prayed about it. We said, you know what? Let's have a time instead of our team meeting. We're just going to wash their feet. We're going to affirm of what we see in Christ in them and just go that way. Unfortunately, things didn't get a lot better. But what I will say is, I think God worked on our hearts, right? And we just know, hey, sometimes we're just here to serve. We might get tough teams, and you know what? I don't know why that happens, but it's really a chance for us to dig down and say, God, what are you doing in my life, in my heart? We can't change people always, but we can serve them, and we can be humble.
One thing that we like to reiterate to our staff in Costa Rica, especially trip leaders, is that we trust you. You have been chosen as a trip leader because there's trust there. So we want to tell you that now. PPM trusts you as a trip leader. We want you to take ownership of your trip. we want you to take ownership and know that you can communicate when you need to while you're on the trip. We want you to take responsibility, to know that, you know, I'll show you tomorrow how to do this, but when you get done with this, you have the right to go to the consultant and make sure that you understand all the details of the trip that you're leading. That you have the responsibility really to make sure that you are, like Jason said, as much as an expert as you possibly can. The more you know about the team, the more you know about the pastor, the more you know about the place, the more you know about the itinerary, the better you are going to feel. I promise you, the group leader's going to feel better. So we trust you. We want you to take ownership. We want you to love the week that you're serving. We want you to feel ultra confident and know you're not alone in it. You have a full support staff with your location leader and also PPM as a whole, but you are trusted. That always makes me feel better when people are like, I trust you to do this. Like, this is not just because, oh, we had way too many trips and we need some more trip leaders, so let's just grab random people. No, you are trusted. You have shown that you are trustworthy. Yeah. Any other things you want to add today?
I think of a trip that, as a trip leader, sometimes we forget that, number one, it's never our trip, it's always God's, no matter how much work we put into it or how much planning we put into it. We can have everything be documented on paper, we can have the conversations with pastors and the group leaders and everything, get to the ground, everything seems to be running smooth, or you get a few wrenches thrown in the sprocket. But overall, it's still God's trip, and it's not by chance. It's kind of cliche. It's not by chance that God has put those team members at that place and at that time for a purpose. And my staff probably tell the story better. They were on a trip, but I'll mess it up a little bit, but you get the gist of it. We had an older lady that came down. She was like 82 years old, to Jamaica. And she just kind of felt like the end of her life. She had been in the workforce and was a highly respected author in the publishing companies with children's curriculum and for schools and so forth. And she was at the end of her life, kind of that woe is me thing, and have I really been that productive? I did so well as this author, but as I got older, the big company that she worked for kind of said, hey, we really don't need you anymore. You're getting kind of outdated in what's happening. And so she was kind of struggling through life. She came to Jamaica. Was put out the team worked out in the bush in the middle of nowhere at this little bitty school. And as this team was working at that school, they started helping in the classrooms. And right there in the curriculum that was being used at that little school in the middle of nowhere, Jamaica, was her book that she wrote. And tell me that God doesn't orchestrate that. We didn't arrange it. We didn't know it beforehand. And God just affirmed to her that, she is still, even in her 80s, even though the author or the company said, we don't need you anymore, you're outdated, the school is using that. And at 82 years old, she got reaffirmed that, I am making a difference. And you're going to be able to see stories like that. And you may have the worst group ever and get that kind of moment. And it makes that whole week experience of, trial and tribulation really worth it when one person's life is just reaffirmed that, I make a difference. And God brought me all the way from here to this little bitty dot on the planet to say you are valuable and you are important. So, you're going to be able to see as trip leaders some amazing things that's way out of your power to control. And be happy that God uses you to be able to witness those things, because it's not just about the team having their life changed. I know for my staff, my wife that was there with them to see that and have conversations, their life was changed as well, not just the team members that were there. But it's a continuous growing period for us, to just see God's handiwork.
Amen.
And I would close with a personal story, and then we'll close in prayer. But just to show you the impact that you could have on a participant, you will have an impact. My first trip leader was Laura here. She's a vet, everybody. She might be in the trip leader session, but she's been around a long time. And we went to Belize, and my husband was a youth pastor for 5 years, and we went to Belize, worked with Pastor Lloyd, really not super connected with the church. Just kind of like, cool, it's awesome, got UPBS, great. But Laura had set up moments that we'll probably be talking about later in the weekend. But she had set up an opportunity for us to go to an orphanage. And at that orphanage, we were able to meet a little boy named Eric. And he's now our son and living in the States. And it was because Laura's leadership, her willingness, she welcomed us immediately. I felt like she was my friend automatically. I probably asked her a bajillion questions. And she willingly talked to me. And she didn't know me, but she loved me. And she loved our family, introduced us to Eric. No, she didn't, but she made room for things to happen. She made room for people to be challenged and to grow and see what God had for them. So not only did we meet Eric, who is now our son, and he's been home for 4 years, but she also talked to me about, she said, do you know any crazy people that would want to hike up a mountain in Costa Rica? I said, yeah, I do. And she invited my husband and I and some other crazy people to hike up a mountain where I fell in love with the country and the people of Costa Rica. And that week, I was able to ask her a million questions about her job. People are going to ask you questions about what you do and why you do it. I was like, wait, you do this full time? Like, you lead trips, and you love Jesus, and you do all of this, and this is your job? She's like, yeah. So the next week when I got home, we started the adoption process. I applied for PPM full time, and my life completely turned upside down because of her relationship with the trip leader. Not because of the pastor, not because of the country, but because trip leader willingly opened her arms, welcomed us in, and shepherded us through the week. Big deal. And then she and Jason decided to hire me, and here I am. So you have an amazing impact. You do not know what those boxes on the itinerary holds for the participants. You have no idea. No idea. Those agendas and those time slots are not just time fillers. Like, life change happens in those, and you get to facilitate that. You get to be a part of it, and people are going to go home and be like, my trip leader showed me Jesus, and that's what I know. And that's good. That's what it's about. I feel like we're supposed to close with like time circling up and praying together. You don't know a lot of people in here, and that's okay. But you're trip leaders, and it's your time to start being bold and praying bold prayers and praying over other people. And I just think that maybe circle up in like fours and just pray over each other to start the week. Pray for open minds. Pray for God to just be able to soak in all the information you're going to get. Pray that you just get filled up with Jesus and that you dig into him, that you find moments with him, and that you're prepared to take on this balancing act that is so great. So yeah, go ahead and get into fours. Pray. Yes, yeah.
Want a little over here.
I think I'm gonna fall asleep soon.
Thank you. Father, wherever we're leading, continue to
this time it's hard on families sometimes, Lord. I just pray that you be with them and help them in this time of absence, Lord. And also to lift up the teams right now, Lord, as they are preparing earnestly, Lord, for their trips, Lord. I pray that you will touch them and guide and direct them in their hearts as well.